The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Undisciplined but undeterred, the Atlanta Falcons found a way to win in Week 15 on Thursday night.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast.
The Falcons coming away with a 29-28 win, and nonetheless, despite the sloppiness, despite the lack of discipline, the Falcons will break down how and why the Falcons found a way to win. We'll talk about some of the standouts, some of these players that typically shine against the Bucs, and some maybe new faces that are going to be Bucs killers in the future, as well as the coaching concerns, the penalties, and the latest updates on Raheem Morris's job status. But, I was going into the fourth quarter, guys, thinking, we're going to come on this podcast, do a post game, being like, yeah, the Falcons found another way to lose. Again, even though they played reasonably well at points in the game, the lack of discipline, the sloppy performance with 19 penalties. I think the record they said during the broadcast was 23 penalties by the Raiders in the past, and the Falcons were looking to be the most penalty-prone team in the history of the NFL. And I was going to come on here and be pretty zen about the whole thing. I told the Locked On Falcons insiders as I was giving them updates throughout the game, you can join at the link in the description below, that I wasn't even mad at the Falcons, playing this sloppy, penalty-riddled sort of game, because this is how they kind of play all season long. Why would I be mad about this when I've been watching this version of the Falcons for 2 months straight, where they constantly find ways to win, even though you can sort of see the positives, as Kirk Herbstreit on the Amazon Prime Thursday night football broadcast talked about how this Falcons team is a roller coaster, where you see a lot of good and you see a lot of bad, and it always results in them losing. But they found a way to not lose for once. And the way that they did it, was doing the thing that Raheem Morris has been saying over and over again for 2 months. We got to find a way to win. And they found a way to win. Right. And you had some early success in this game, where the Falcons were able to get their first touchdown drive thanks to a penalty by the Bucs that, negated a made field goal by Zane Gonzalez, but they were able to convert that into a touchdown to Kyle Pitts. Then their second score was also facilitated by Kyle Pitts, back-to-back double move routes, one for 35 yards, then on a 17-yard touchdown, and that gave the Falcons a 14-10 lead, in the final 30 seconds of the first half. And then, of course, the defense, as they have too often this year in the 2-minute drill, giving up points, right, thanks to a big play against Kobe Bryant, who stepped in for an injured Mike Hughes in this game. He slipped on a play and gave up a big play to Mike Evans for 33 yards that set up a Tampa Bay Buccaneer field goal to make it 14-13 at halftime. And then, of course, the third quarter woes hit the Falcons, as they hit them every stinking week, right? The Bucs scored. Devin Culp, the tight end, scored a touchdown, thanks to a scoring drive where Kobe Bryant once again got blessed by Mike Evans, got mossed by Mike Evans on a 45-yard play. Then you had a Kirk Cousins intentional grounding killing a drive that included an awful drop that could have been a touchdown from David Sills. And then the next Falcons possession, Bijan fumbles, right? And the Bucs turned that into 8 points thanks to a Chris Godwin touchdown, and then a 2-point conversion by Godwin. And you're sitting there going well, at least the third quarter is over, but the Falcons are down 28-14. And based off of how this team has played, when they're now in pass-only mode, there's no reason to think. I said this to the Locked On Falcons. There's no chance that the Falcons I didn't say there's no chance, but I basically said, I don't believe that this team is going to come back. Bijan redeems himself, gets a couple of catches, gets the drive rolling. Falcons use some up-tempo. They get a big catch from Kyle Pitts. David Sills comes back, redeems himself with another big catch, and then Bijan finishes it with a rushing touchdown. It's okay, well, they scored, but, that's probably going to be it, right? Then a D. Alford comes through with an interception on the next drive, right? Channeling his inner Brent Grimes, climbing the ladder to snag a Baker Mayfield interception. And then Kyle Pitts converts that. The Falcons actually converted a turnover into points. Like, we've never seen the Falcons do that, because Kyle Pitts makes an acrobatic grab in the end zone where it's like, did he catch the ball inbound because his butt and elbow hit simultaneous? His butt inbounds, his elbow out of bounds. But hey, it was simultaneous. They ruled it a catch. They couldn't overturn it. This is now twice where Kyle Pitts, going against the Bucs in Tampa Bay, has a weird touchdown where he may have not have scored, but you can't really tell from the replay. And so they give Kyle Pitts, going back to that Antoine Winfield strip at the goal line last year, if you forgot about that. But, the Falcons went for 2 on both of those touchdowns, right? The Bijan rushing touchdown, the Kyle Pitts touchdown. Right? They failed both times. So it's not a tie game at that point, 28-28. It's 28-26. And of course, everybody's up in arms for the Raheem making a terrible decision to go for 2 the first time around, rather than just kicking the PAT and getting the 7 points to potentially tie the game. I'm not as mad at Raheem for that decision as others are, right? Given this team's overtime issues, they've lost 4 straight games in overtime. The fact that Raheem going for 2, to me, if you successfully convert one of those 2-point conversions that the Falcons attempted, you're potentially avoiding overtime. You're going out there and winning the game. And so I get the logic behind Raheem's decisions there. I'm sure plenty of you are going to sit here and yell at me and tell me that Aaron, you're wrong. It was a terrible decision. Raheem's the worst, all that stuff. I get it. It's fair to criticize. I'm not saying that he was right. I'm just sitting here saying, I understand it. I'm not as mad at it. I think it's fair to criticize, but I get where his logic was coming from in that. But you don't convert in those situations, so you're still down 28-26 with 3.5 minutes to go. Your defense needs to get a stop. You get the stop. David Onyemata coming through with a big tackle for loss. Then Baker Mayfield and the Bucs deciding to throw the ball in 2nd and 14 rather than running out the clock, right? Baker Mayfield misses an open Egbuka who beats D. Alford over the middle. That stops the clock. Then Jesse Bates gets a pressure on the blitz. Shout out to the Falcons blitz coming through tonight after a quiet couple of weeks that we talked about earlier this week on the podcast, right? He gets pressure on the blitz, and Jalen Walker and Divine Diablo clean up to get the sack, and the Falcons take over with 1:49, no timeouts left. David Sills catching a 17-yard pass, right? Then you get a sack strip. Elijah Wilkinson, who was a disaster in week 1 against Hassan Reddick, had been mostly okay tonight, and then all of a sudden Hassan Reddick shows up, strips Kirk Cousins, but the Falcons recover. It's a simultaneous recovery. The refs were against the Falcons all night, but they decided to come through for the Falcons in the 4th quarter in this game. Simultaneous recovery, so it goes back to the Falcons somehow, some way. You get a holding call on Jake Matthews. That sets up a 2nd and 28, right? Todd Bowles, Bucs coach, accepts the penalty rather than declining it, which would have been a 3rd and 18. I'm sure James Yarko is flipping out on Locked On Bucs. I'm curious what his thoughts are, where that accepting that penalty basically meant the Falcons now had 3 tries to get 28 yards versus giving the Falcons only 2 tries to get 18 yards if he had declined the penalty. Again, I ain't complaining about it, but I'm sure James Yarko is. Go check it out on Locked On Bucs. But, Kyle Pitts then gets 14 on the next play. Now it's, sets up a 3rd and 28 or a 3rd and 14. And then David Sills gets 21 on a 4th and 14 or whatever it wound up being, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't do math. Right. But basically it was a 4th and 14. David Sills makes the big clutch catch. He heard all the slander from yours truly, right? And the Falcons run a couple of plays, some spike plays, set up the game-winning 43-yard field goal from Zane Gonzalez. He hits it. We get another walk-off win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I mentioned this on the Falcons squad show. Both of these teams made some questionable decisions at the end of the game that potentially could cost them. You could criticize Raheem Morris's game management late. You could criticize Todd Bowles' game management late. It was kind of a back-and-forth sort of game where it's like, do you want to win the game? It's like, no, we don't want to win the game. Do you want to win the game? No, we don't want to win the game. And ultimately the Falcons were like, okay, we'll win the game. And that's basically what it is. And so it's great to talk about a win for once, right? It's a sloppy, undisciplined, ugly win. But, the Falcons' trademark way of finding ways to lose this type of game didn't happen, despite the billion penalties that they had. And so beggars can't be choosers at this point in the season, baby. They found a way. They finally, Raheem's been saying, we got to find a way to win. And they found a way to win. Or, again, maybe if you check out Locked On Bucs, they're saying the Bucs found a way to lose. But hey, well, yeah, it's same different side of the same coin, right? And so, does this give me hope that like this is a new wrinkle for the Falcons? Or they finally found a way to win. They just had to get that monkey. No, I don't have that. Right? It's probably a one-off. Right? But for once, we can sit here and say, hey, the Falcons didn't lay down. Right? Instead, they did the thing that we always constantly want them to do, which is rise up, baby. So, hey, man, we got one, guys. They did it one time this season, right? Or, probably a couple of times early in the season as well. But we don't count that because that feels like that was eons ago, right? And so if basically I just sit here, guys, and I go like, if this winds up ruining James Yarko of Locked On Bucs' Christmas, that's a win in my book.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
The Bucs blow a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter, and with it, likely blow their chances at the postseason.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast.
I'm at a loss for words. Like that, I have to laugh through it because this is just so unbelievably ridiculous. To quote the great Michael Scott, it's over. We are screwed. This is the worst. In a game where the Buccaneers had a 28-14 lead with 13 minutes left, where the offense finally looked like it was about to turn the corner. You finally had Evans and Godwin and Ibuka and McMillan and Bucky all out there together. And it started off slow, but as the game progressed, it started to pick up and you started to see, okay, this is what this offense is actually capable of. It looked like the early stages of what we were expecting to see all season long. Mike Evans absolutely dominated this game. Had a couple of scares. He got undercut by Kobe Bryant, hurt his lower back, went out, came back, went down again, holding his shoulder. They checked him out. He said he was good. He came back again, 6 for 132 in his return. He had 8 yards fewer in this game than he had in the first 4 games combined. But it's the same old crap. You didn't get a stop on defense when you needed it the most. You had no answer for Kyle Pitts whatsoever. And I was talking with the insiders quite a bit. I was talking on Twitter, and a lot of people were saying, Pitts only ever looks good against the Bucs. It's not entirely true. Pitts has been a good tight end, but this is why he was drafted as high as he was. This is why, he had so much hype around him, and this is what he's capable of when he's finally utilized in the right way. But the Bucs were handing it to him on a silver platter. And it goes back to what I said all week long. This is a game that if the Bucs win, Todd Bowles doesn't save his job. It would take more than this one game. But this one game, if you lose it, will cost you your job. There's no way the Buccaneers can keep Todd Bowles. And I see a lot of you in the comment section, saying fire him tonight. No, don't fire him tonight. Absolutely do not fire him tonight. I have no faith that this team is going to beat the Panthers twice and still make the playoffs, given what we've seen from the defensive side of the ball. No faith at all. So why fire him now? What good does that do you now? Because then you're going to promote someone on an interim basis. Is it Grizzard? I don't think he's ready for that. Is it Larry Foote? It's certainly not going to be McGahee, the special teams coordinator. So what good does that do you? Does it fire up the team to beat the Panthers twice, get into the first round of the playoffs, and get blown out by the Seahawks? At this point, you ride it out. Just ride it out. Why? Because this was a team that coming into the season had Super Bowl aspirations. They had the talent to make it to a Super Bowl. So why would you not just go ahead, let this thing ride out? You're moving on from this coaching staff in the offseason. If you don't, then I have a lot more questions. But let them ride it out. Maybe they win one of the next 3 and they finish 8-9. Now you get a better draft pick, and you're going to add even more talent to an already loaded roster. And then hopefully you're bringing somebody in that can actually coach them up and allow them, or put them in positions to reach their capabilities. Somebody that can actually get this team to reach their ceiling, which is a Super Bowl. What good does firing Todd Bowles tonight do other than send a message that we already know? I'd rather have a better draft pick. I would rather find myself in the top 15 and get a top tier starting linebacker or a top tier starting edge rusher than name an interim coach, get a little bit of momentum, make it to the first round of the playoffs, lose, and now you're picking at 20 instead of 14. I don't know their exact draft position right now, but that's the way that I view this now. It won't change anything except for your draft position. Todd Bowles made this bet. He's got a lie in it. He dug this hole. He's got to get himself out of it. And the only way he's going to get out of it is the day after the season when he sits down with Jason Light and the Glazier family and they say, Todd, we want to thank you for what you did for this football team in 2020 as the defensive coordinator. We want to thank you for winning division titles. But the time has come for you to move on. Because this team is good enough to compete with the best in the NFL. And we didn't see that this year. We didn't see the fight. We didn't see the passion. We didn't see the fire. And it's time to make a change. That's how he's going to get out of this hole. May not be by his choice. Maybe he does decide that he just wants to walk away instead of, you can't fire me, I quit. Maybe he says, I've decided to retire. We've heard those rumors for a little while. The Atlanta Falcons had 19 penalties for 125 yards, and you still lost. They only went 5 for 11 on third down. But those third downs included a 3rd and 7 to get themselves in position for Kyle Pitts' 3rd touchdown of the game. I looked it up. Kyle Pitts, and again, I'm dead serious when I say that he's been a good tight end. I believe that he has the 5th most receiving yards of any tight end since he entered the league. But he has scored 3 or fewer touchdowns in 4 of his 5 seasons. And he got a hat trick against the Bucs in their house. You had Atlanta 3rd and 28. 3rd and 28. Those were the situations where Todd Bowles would typically be licking his chops. And Hassan Reddick made what could have been the play of the game if it wasn't stolen away from him. That was why you paid Hassan Reddick, was for that play right there. He straight up beat his guy man on man and stripped the ball right out of Kirk Cousins' hands. I need somebody from the Referees Association to explain to me how the Falcons managed to recover a fumble that 6 Buccaneers were around. But when the Bucs emerged from a pile with a football, you rule it simultaneous recovery and award the ball to the Falcons. I need a real explanation for that. But even then, you had them 3rd and 28, and you allowed them to complete a 14-yard pass to Pitts to set up 4th and 14. Then you gave up a 21-yard pass to Sills, and that basically put them right on the cusp of field goal range. That's on Todd. Plain and simple.
The matchup that I think has the most juice in the NFL today, Lions-Rams.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We know this is a Lions team, explosive, talented, great coaching, so much momentum in Detroit. Best Thanksgiving halftime performance I've ever seen with Jack White, Eminem. But heading into this one, is this feel like it is a must win to continue these playoff hopes? Right now, the Lions right on the outside looking in. Just talk about the importance of this game heading into this one against the Rams at SoFi.
Yeah, Doug, always good to see you. I wouldn't call it a must-win yet, and I think this is going to be a very difficult game for the Lions to win because the Rams are playing so well, and the Lions are going to have to travel out west and win a game that is going to be very difficult to win just because of how well the Rams are playing and how good Matthew Stafford and that offense have been. And don't forget about that front four you guys have, really that front three and the two outside linebackers. It's going to be tough to block that Rams front. With that being said, you're right. Detroit's sitting in a spot at 8-5 where they're on the outside looking in right now for the playoffs. But if they lose this game, I'm not going to get on the air on Monday or even on Sunday on my post-game show and say it's over. It's not. Then they would have to beat the Steelers and Vikings to set up what I think would be a win and in situation against the Bears. I think it's in week 18. I think it's going to come down to that game at Soldier Field. So I think Chicago is going to lose a couple games coming up, whether it's Green Bay, whether it's at San Francisco, which could set up a situation where the Bears are a game up on the Lions with 1 to play. Lions win, that they'd be in because they have the tiebreaker in a sweep of Chicago. So I'm not saying this is a must win, but man, it would be nice for the Lions to maybe shock a lot of people and beat a really, really good team on the road here.
Don't worry, Matt. I set you up for that because one of my biggest pet peeves in sports is when people call something a must win when it technically is not a must win, whether it eliminates you from playoff contention, whether you're eliminating the playoffs in maybe a 5-7 game series or a 1-and-done game. So I could not agree with you more. Not a must win for the Lions, but as you point out, it would be really nice. It would make life a lot better for Detroit to win. If you're the Rams, you want to win this game because really the playoffs have begun for the Rams when you look at this 2 games that they have. You got the Lions at home at SoFi Stadium, all the subplots, Jared Goff coming back to SoFi, the Lions beating the Rams in the playoffs. That one still stings very much for Rams fans. But if you win on Sunday, you clinch a playoff berth. And then you set up a matchup with the Seahawks on the road on Thursday Night Football that really puts you in a great spot to get that top seed in the NFC. So there's so much to play for on the Rams end. The Lions getting 5.5 points, the most they've got in a game in a long time, which surprises me a little bit. But I think for this one, you always have to start Lions versus Rams with Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. And Matthew Stafford, Lions legend, is possibly playing his best football of his career, the front runner to win the MVP this season. It's just been this magical year for Matt Stafford. He didn't have his best game against the Carolina Panthers, and some were wondering, does that open the door for Drake May to step in and possibly win that award? And then he has another big showing against the Cardinals, 3 touchdowns and no interception. So, yeah, just kind of from the outside looking in, I know that you probably followed Matthew Stafford for even longer than I have. Yeah. What is it like to see him having this success this year with the Rams?
I don't think it's a surprise to anybody how good he's playing, especially here in Detroit. And if you recall years ago, after the Lions shipped him to LA and he won a Super Bowl, it turned into a Stafford love fest here as the Rams were making that run. The Lions won 3 games. All of a sudden there were Detroit Rams t-shirts. People were adopting the Rams for that run. It was, I'm sorry, but it was wrong. It was stupid. I get the Stafford love. He wins the Super Bowl. But then you're right. Last couple of years, questions about his health. Will he even play this year? He's been awesome. And when you give him time, and they've revamped that offensive line over the last few years, and they're phenomenal. I'm a big Steve Avila fan. I love the Devontae Adams pickup, and he and Puka Nacua seem to have that connection that he and Calvin Johnson had, and it's scary. And I think Lion fans are past all this now. They love Jared Goff. They had the kind of the vitriol before the playoff game where fans 2 hours before the game were screaming Jared Goff's name, and the Jared Goff chant was born before that Rams game just to kind of show Stafford, hey, you're coming back, but we're rooting for our guy. And our guy won. And I think it's worked out for both teams. I really believe that. I think Stafford did the right thing by wanting to go and start something fresh and connecting with McVay. And I think Jared Goff got the right soft landing spot. And he's been very, very good here. So, but this year, man, and you tell me, Doug, I mean, he just seems to be playing at a different level, and have this kind of running attack with those two kids behind him and that offensive line. I mean, the stage is set for him in the NFC, I think, to make a long run.
No doubt about it. I mean, he's said it multiple times that he's having a blast. He's enjoying himself. And heading into this season, it was, can you even rely on Matthew Stafford? Will we have to turn to a Jimmy Garoppolo for multiple games this season? And I think to the delight of Rams fans everywhere, he's been better than you could have imagined. And just statistically, performance-wise, at age 37, I think a big reason why is other guys have emerged, right? Cooper Kupp, as much as we love Cooper Kupp here, he was not the Cooper Kupp that you know him to be for the last couple of seasons. You bring in Devontae Adams. He leads the league in touchdown receptions. He improves this Rams red zone offense, which was one of the big reasons why they lost at Ford Field a couple years ago. And he helps turn them into a top 5 team in the red zone. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, they've emerged as a two-headed monster. Puka Nacua has taken another leap. You've seen them use the tight ends. Offensive line has protected him. So all those things working in synergy had led to just a Matthew Stafford that's been able to play free and healthy. And you know that he's always been one of the best pure throws of the football that we've ever seen. But I think Jared Goff, I will say, will always have a soft spot. Rams fans will, for Jared Goff, because he was that first top pick when they come back to LA, led him to some big wins, took him to the Super Bowl. I'm just upset that we didn't come up with the Jared Goff chant. Jared Goff. It was so easy. He was right there. Why didn't we come up with it? But it's so mind-blowing too. And you look at the numbers since the trade, the Rams 47-34, the Lions 47-33-1. That's 9th for the Rams, 8th for the Lions. 5 playoff wins for the Rams, 2 for the Lions. The Lions have turned into one of the most exciting teams in the NFL. They've completely gone 180 to what they were. And I think this is one of those extremely rare, both sides won the trade. And it's cool to see. But I also think that Jared Goff is going to want to go into SoFi, beat his old team. I think Matthew Stafford is going to show the Lions too. So I think that's always going to remain in there.
It's interesting, Doug. It's the one thing Goff hasn't done. I mean, since he's come to Detroit, he's done it all. He won 2 playoff games here, which Stafford never did. He won 1 playoff game here, which Stafford never did. He's taken this team to division titles, which they hadn't done since the 90s. But you're right. He hasn't gone into his old house and won. The 2 wins, of course, over the Rams and his former team and coach were both at Ford Field. So this would be kind of a new thing for him to do. The offense seemed to click again last Thursday against Dallas. They put up a 40-burger on the Cowboys, so that's a good sign. Question's going to be, I don't think about the offense this week. I think they'll score some points, and certainly protecting Goff is huge. But I think the biggest issue for the Lions this weekend is going to be if they're both their safeties, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, both likely out. We know Branch is. Joseph, I don't think he's going to play. That could spell doom against that passing attack.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
We're still processing Sherrone Moore's firing, but things took a dark turn after that.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Yesterday was a bit of an emotional show, not very structured, a lot of repetition as I was processing a lot of the information. Now, obviously, knew the general what have you, as we discussed on yesterday's show, but did not have any evidence to be able to speak about it here on this show. It was just a lot of hearsay. He said, she said it up until yesterday. So let's break down fact from fiction. On one end, we're going to start there and try to get down to the bottom of it. We're going to talk about Sherrone Moore and his arrest as well, everything that's kind of happened there. And then we'll get into some coaching candidates and things. We'll actually get into a little bit of that football part. The 5 guys that I would go after, a little more than 5, but nonetheless. So that's the plan for today. Everything I said yesterday holds true. So we'll start there. But as I said, I started having some inklings last year summer. That's not anything like liking girls' Instagram posts, whether it's someone close to me or not. Like that doesn't really, that's not fireable, but it does kind of speak to who you are. You have that. Then you have the stuff that I started hearing after the USC game. Again, that's a hard thing to prove, and we try to operate in the facts of things on this show as much as we can. And we more so dispel rumors when we know that they aren't real. There's a reason why we didn't dispel the rumors as they were circulating. You see a lot of different kind of things now in the aftermath of what everything was. Again, we're not mentioning names beyond Sherrone Moore here. There are reasons for that. I'm not saying that people are wrong about them, but we don't need to create more of a circus than what it already is. But nonetheless, I don't know that there's a lot of things that I can come and dispel, but one of the things that I will kind of start with is this idea that Michigan sat on the story, and once they lost to Ohio State, then it was suddenly okay, now what can we do to put things in motion? And I understand that that's the optics. Like, can we sign our class and then we'll figure it out from there? I understand that's what the optics look like, but everything I've been told, and I'll give you some timelines here, indicate that that's not what was happening. So I started to first hear that there were some donors who were very antsy about all of this going into the Washington game, meaning like the day of the Washington game, talking to some people on the ground. There were some donors that were starting to be like, this is what's happening. We need to get this guy out. So that's kind of when it started, from not when it started overall, but like, that's when like I became aware that there was a push from people to get to the bottom of it and to come up with evidence to get to the day that we arrived at yesterday. And that yesterday, and John U. Bacon, had his own report on this. They can back it up. Yesterday was the first time that Michigan actually had the evidence in hand and was able to say, okay, now we're doing it, right? Like, but before yesterday, they didn't have evidence. Again, you can only go on so much, right? Like, this isn't like a bank robbery with cameras and paper trails and, marked bills and things of that nature, right? Like, you're not going to fire your head coach based off of a rumor. Certainly, like, that's just not what's going to happen. So you had to have evidence, and that's kind of when they started. And I know that amped up leading into the Ohio State game. And I believe it was the Monday of the week of the game. It was Monday or Tuesday, I believe, the week of the game, not the week before. And I'm trying to get my memory right here. But that there was a group of donors who had hired lawyers, maybe private investigators. I'm kind of trying to figure that out, to try to drum up evidence with the idea that, not drum up in terms of like create, but drum up in terms of actually procuring actual evidence, with the idea that regardless of what had happened in the Ohio State game, that Michigan would depart with Sherrone Moore after the season. Now, I had kind of believed, based off of just Michigan's actions, that they had not gotten that. And that proves correct in terms of there is no world in which Michigan is allowing Sherrone Moore to hire Kerry Combs or have a press conference on Monday, appear on the teleconference or the Zoom conference for the Citrus Bowl, and all of that kind of stuff earlier in the week. That none of that would have happened if Michigan was like, we've got the goods, we're just kind of biding our time, right? So there's that. So what changed? I do believe that the girl stepped up, and that's kind of part of what John U. Bacon had said. I had heard about 2 weeks ago-ish, so around the same time, that her dad had gotten involved in this. So that once that happened, that became a little bit more clear that they were maybe going to have her support in one way or another as far as coming clean about this whole scenario. But outside of those things that I just said, yeah, I've heard a lot of the things that are rumors out there. Again, none of them have come to light. Like we've reached kind of the point, unlike the whole Connor Stallion Signgate thing, where I was talking directly with Connor and knew more than, we still have, not even really talked about fully, but like knew more. This is a different scenario, kind of where it's like, okay, I had a baseline understanding of what this was. And there's more rumors out there, but nothing like egregious compared to what we've already heard, which is already very egregious. This is a scenario where it's like, okay, now we all kind of know the same thing as far as what the facts are, but we don't need to go further, right? Like there's the mugshot that's circulating. I mean, you can tell that's AI. He's in jail. We're going to talk about that momentarily, but like he's in jail, but it's pretty clear that that's not really like his picture. You can tell by like his birthmarks aren't on the picture. It's not so pixelated that it wouldn't have those. How would someone procure that about the time that he was being processed? All that kind of stuff, right? So like we don't need to make extra things up in order to drag Sherrone Moore, because everything that actually is already bad enough. So there's that. But I don't want to even necessarily come as far as to say like good on the athletic department for actually, for doing what it needed to do, right? Like this is Chris Rock, like you're supposed to type of stuff, right? Like I raise my kids. Well, you're supposed to, my head coach is philandering with someone within the athletic department. Well, yeah, you're supposed to fire that person as soon as you actually have proof, which is what they did. But I'm not going to go as far as to defend anything there. And it's not just because I want to come at them, like I know a lot of people are, but it's also because we don't really have all the facts yet as far as, what did they have? What didn't they have? What did they know? How provable was it? At the same time, I think a lot of heads are going to roll. Because as much as I love Ward, I know I'm in a minority there, but as much as I do, it's like, there was a lot of, like I said yesterday, a lot of vetting that didn't happen. There have been a lot of incidents with coaches in Ann Arbor on his watch. And regardless, it kind of becomes, if nothing else, regardless of, hey, what do you expect him to do? Which would be like the Ward apologist side of it. What do you expect him to do? All of these things happening on his watch, things that have not happened in Ann Arbor, then like you just, at some point you have to look and say like, okay, well, it's kind of like Jim Harbaugh getting punished for Connor Stallions and Signgate, right? Like at some point, like there is some culpability. So I'm not going to go one way and saying like, hey, this is a scenario where what do you expect him to do? And they acted correctly when presented with evidence. I'm also not going to say either like, hey, it's all good in the hood here either. At this point, kind of like I said with the football program, minus a couple people, minus maybe like Tony Alford, Lamar Morgan, I've got love for a lot of these guys, right? Lou Esposito, Wink Martindale. I really do love these guys. That said, like, I kind of feel like a house cleaning is in order, and it starts at the very top, right? Like they need a cleansing in Ann Arbor to get past a lot of these things. And it's, I think it doesn't tarnish the championship. It doesn't tarnish Jim Harbaugh's legacy, but it kind of starts with a lot of the people he brought in. I mean, heck, the co-offensive coordinators for Michigan in 2022 are now under, like, I mean, Matt Weiss is currently free, but like essentially under lock and key. That's a failure on the part of the athletic department.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Miami's freshmen are built different. There are 3 first-year players who will be decisive in the Hurricanes making a deep playoff run.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes.
Let's talk about key players. And man, we still have to wait another 8 days. I kind of wish it was this Saturday, Miami against Texas A&M. Maybe it's good that it isn't because it gives Keontae Scott possibly more time to get healthy for next week. But when I'm going through key players for this matchup, something really stood out to me, and it's the balance of Miami's roster when it comes to veteran leadership and certain juniors and seniors, especially seniors, who are obviously cornerstones of this roster and guys who have to step up and play great next Saturday. But on the other end of that, there's at least 3 18-year-old true freshmen who hold the keys to victory next Saturday. And first of all, that's a testament to the balance of this roster, because obviously you always want to have upperclassmen to rely on. But if you have true freshmen who are playing pivotal roles, that's a great sign for the future, because those freshmen are going to be sophomores next year, juniors before they're eligible to leave for the NFL. So Miami's roster balance-wise is in a great place right now. But, no pressure for, guys who were at their prom a year ago, or in the case of one of our key true freshmen, should be going to his prom later on this year because he left high school a year early. And so, we can start with that player, early enrollee, Malachi Toney. Malachi Toney he might be the key. And Texas A&M folks are taking notice, right? When I see what the people who cover the Aggies are saying about Miami, it's one of 2 names that they mentioned first. It's either Malachi Toney or Ruben Bain. But I think they understand that their defense having the right plan against Malachi Toney could decide a win or a loss for the Aggies. And these 2 teams, Miami and A&M, they've got a lot of similarities. So I think the difference here, when both teams are really, really good at the line of scrimmage, 2 really good defenses, 2 really explosive good offenses, it could come down to a couple of X plays or a couple of extra gadget plays that Miami is able to convert on. Malachi Toney, if he's able to break off an explosive outside run, if he throws a deep pass on a trick play, if he burns the secondary for a 60-yard gain, like things like that could very well decide the outcome here. I think a couple of extra explosive plays in one direction, and if you're Miami, Malachi Toney is the guy who's probably involved in that. Toney this year, freshman All-American. I thought he actually should have been named the Horning Player of the Year, which goes to the most versatile guy. Ironically enough, Malachi Toney lost out that award to Casey Concepcion, who's on the A&M side. But 2 of the most versatile playmakers in the country are going to go head-to-head. And Malachi Toney this year, 1,200 all-purpose yards, over 1,200. I think it's like 1,245, something like that, all-purpose yards. 10 touchdowns this season, including 7 receiving touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. Toney gives you so many different options. And even if that's as a decoy, as the truth teller Bruce Warner loves to say, Malachi Toney as a decoy opens up the entire opposite half of the field. He might be the most important player on this matchup. Certainly for Miami on the offensive side of the ball, he is. But sticking with the true freshmen, a couple more who are going to be pivotal in this game. Bryce Fitzgerald, true freshman nickel corner. Now, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to assume he starts this game because we've talked on this show about the possibility of Keontae Scott being back. Missed the final 2 games with a foot injury, okay? If Keontae Scott isn't back, and there are no guarantees, it might be a 50-50 thing or a 40-60 thing, I'm going to assume Bryce Fitzgerald is going to start at the nickel. Even if he doesn't start, he's going to play a lot, and he's going to have a lot of matchups against KC Concepcion, who's maybe the best overall player on Texas A&M. Fitzgerald, true freshman, has been sensational this year. He leads Miami with 4 interceptions this season. Gosh, if you could get a Bryce Fitzgerald pick in this game, that'd be worth a pot of gold. Another true freshman, Gerard Pringle. I really, really think Pringle is going to be key in this matchup, and I say it because Texas A&M's defense, they're very good overall, but the Aggies have been vulnerable at times to explosive runs on the perimeter. In fact, Texas A&M has given up more runs of 20-plus yards than anyone else in the SEC this season. Their run fits have been an issue for them. So Gerard Pringle, to me, you kind of put him in the same boat as Malachi Toney. You get a couple of extra explosive plays, whether it's catching a pass out of the backfield, breaking a run outside where A&M tends to be more vulnerable. Gerard Pringle, now he's not going to have to do it by himself because Miami's going to have a committee of running backs. Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown are your bruisers in the interior part of your running game, and they're going to play a really important role in wearing down that A&M defensive line. But the spark you can get from Gerard Pringle, I think, is especially important in this matchup. So those are the true freshmen who I believe are going to play pivotal roles here. Freshman X factors, guys who won't have as much responsibility on their plates but can make a difference in this matchup. Dante Simpson as a rotational defensive tackle, the interior part of Miami's defensive line. Obviously, the big playmakers there, Ahmad Moten and David Blay, who should be good from injury. But if a guy like Dante Simpson gets some reps, you got to make the most of those. Obviously, I don't want to leave out Justin Scott. He's not a freshman, but he's also going to be a big part of that interior rotation. But Dante Simpson is a guy I wonder how much we'll see of him. And a couple more receivers, because it's not just Malachi Toney. He's the focal point, but Josh Moore, who has been a bigger part of the offense in the second half of the season. He catches a couple of contested balls, can really help change this game. And Dalen Upshaw, who's really explosive. He could catch a screen pass or catch something on the perimeter and create some yards after catch in a big play. All right, but let's get back to the most important players, period, in this matchup as we get to the upperclassmen. Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. Obviously, those are Miami's game wreckers on the defensive line. Pressure can force Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed into bad game decisions, okay? Bain and Mesidor also play the run very well, especially Bain. But pressure is going to be key. We'll talk about it more with Texas A&M. When Marcel Reed gets into a funk, he's a guy who's capable of making critical mistakes to hurt his football team. You get him playing poorly by pressuring him and making him uncomfortable. And, you know, the same way A&M's defensive coordinator is going to be kept up at night thinking about how do we contain Malachi Toney. Their offensive coordinator is going to be up at night thinking about Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. We'll see what the plan is for those guys. Carson Beck could have led off with him, the starting quarterback. Miami needs Carson Beck to play the way he ended the regular season, playing his best football over the final 4 games. And also Beck, being an experienced player like he is, 6-year guy, his experience on the road going to tough SEC environments like the one you're about to go into, that is invaluable experience for Carson. And we talk about the way he ended the season. In Beck's final 4 games of the year, he threw for 1,125 yards with 11 touchdown passes, 1 interception, and a receiving touchdown. So 12 touchdowns, 1 INT to end the year. If you get that version of Carson Beck, Miami's going to have a chance to win this football game.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners.
I think that this team can surprise a lot. First, got to get past Alabama. That's the most important thing, especially in a rematch situation. The rumors floating around about, people feeling beat up and hurt and kind of struggling, maybe kind of beneficial to Oklahoma, may not. I don't know. But I'll say that it'll be definitely it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun weekend as we prepare for it. I'm just ready to see what the injury report looks like for us.
Yeah, if we can get our Mason Thomas back, if Xavier Robinson and Torrey Blaylock are healthier than what they've been the last month of the season, dude, I have no reason not to feel confident in Oklahoma. We both picked Oklahoma to beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and I feel more confident about this team going into this game than I did that game.
Yeah.
So it's time. All right, this one comes from Tabs R Us. He says, the offense has had 3 weeks to recover and prepare. If they're going to show up this season, this is the time to do it. If they are up to the task, then no one is safe.
Yeah, this is your opportunity. Like I said, you've had roughly 3 weeks to get everybody healthy. John Mateer's had his weeks to try to figure things out and prepare for this defense. This is now his chance to go out there and throw for 300 and some yards, right? It's your chance to go out there and throw for some yards. You probably won't throw for 300. Georgia couldn't even get 300 in total offense against this defense. And so let's be realistic here, folks. This is an SEC defense. There's a reason why it's tough for everybody, period. But we should be able to have some fun in our own stadium and be able to really sling the ball a little bit better, or at least run the ball better. I anticipate with the offensive line possibly being stronger, being healthier, the running back should be a little bit better. We should be able to make some things happen on the ground. And that's kind of what I'll be looking for as we talk about it going into next week. What the heck this ground game looks like.
Protect the football, find some explosives like you have, get the run game going, get Jaren Kanak more involved. Good things happen when Jaren Kanak is involved in the offense, and you're going to have a chance. But again, a lot of it does come down to what does the defense do to slow down Ty Simpson and an explosive Alabama offense. This one comes from Stephen Hart. Health, healing, home. Big things for Bama to overcome, especially with Venables and the deep, talented defense.
Yes. And the way that we played them in Tuscaloosa, I don't think that'll be the same strategy. I think you'll see a lot more aggressiveness in this game, which will be more beneficial because, again, they're dealing with, potential injuries or, some players, being a little tight. Some injuries you can tell are ones that take a few weeks more than what just a couple of weeks. It takes months sometimes to really get over. If the rumors are true around the tight end and the running back and the quarterback, they're going to come in here still limping and with a lot of battle wounds from that Georgia game that probably we're going to try to exploit. Oh, headphone fell. So,
it's time to make Ty Simpson uncomfortable early. Don't let him settle in, get into a rhythm, get comfortable in the pocket, get after him early and see what he's got. If he's got if he's able to beat you early and get some throws, then okay, fine. But challenge him. Make him beat you with his arm. Make him beat the blitz. Make him uncomfortable. This one comes from the 80s Cat. He says, not sure. Bama will be hungry for revenge, but they do have some injuries and drama going on, as Jay just alluded to. Think OU pulls it out. It will be close.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun, close game. I would like for us to just blow them out and call it a day. I would like for us to have another 2024. That would be awesome. Just go 24-3 and just shut them out and make it really tough on them. But I'm being realistic. Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb are really good offensive guys. They do a really good job of scheming things up. Now, granted, we probably have a game plan you can watch again with the UGA game and how they really bottled them up in the second half. Probably could do something similar this time around. We have more film and we have a better understanding of how to really slow them down. But There's no guarantees here. We still got to go out there and execute. But I know BV is going to have these boys ready.
Yeah, he is going to have them ready. I think about this offense and I think, okay, what were the games where maybe they struggled the most? And aside from in Tuscaloosa against Oklahoma, where, listen, they did throw for a lot of yards, but on the road, they weren't super successful. Against Florida State in Tallahassee, they only averaged 5.9 yards per play. Now they were a little bit more successful against Georgia on a yard per play basis, 8.2 yards per play, but they only scored 24 points. Against South Carolina, again, they scored 29. But again, we know that South Carolina team was beat up, banged up, struggling, but they still only averaged 5.9 yards per play. And then against Auburn, again, a team that was just kind of on its last legs, aside from it being a rivalry game, Alabama only averaged, sorry, I was looking at the wrong number. Wait, where is it? Yeah, they averaged only 3.5 yards per play, yards per attempt against Auburn. Man, I was looking at all the wrong numbers. All right, let's do this again. Florida State, 4.7. Georgia, 5.2. Missouri, 4.3. South Carolina, 4.9. Auburn, 3.8. All road games, all below their season average of 5.7. So
yeah,
coming into Norman against an Oklahoma defense that already had a successful game against them in front of a fan base like it is in Norman with Oklahoma and Sooner Nation, I don't expect them to be better than their average on the season in yards per play.
No, me either. They have struggled on the road, and they really have struggled. Like, the run game was actually better against Auburn, but they could not pass for nothing. And it was bad. Like, Ty Simpson, as it was mentioned, it felt like we broke him. Even though he put up good numbers in that game, it was not a good game for him, like, overall. Like, it's just, you saw a massive regression. Mm-hmm. And I've heard Bama fans say that they felt like Oklahoma put out the blueprint to beat them, which, in a way, they kind of did that last year too, but whatevs. Yeah, there was pain that was seen in that game. Now, like I said, the run game was a lot better against Auburn, but then Georgia was -3. I mean, you go from 80 to 158 to -3. Whew. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to get any better because their running backs are still hurt. So
yeah,
the question is can they get movement against us in Norman in the cold? Because running is going to be critical in this game because the weather is not going to be optimal for throwing it anyway. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to figure out how to run the ball, and Ty Simpson's not going to be a factor when it comes to that.
Yeah, so their sixth lowest games in yards per play were on the road or the neutral site SEC championship game against Georgia. The seventh lowest game in yards per play this season was against us, against Oklahoma in Tuscaloosa. Yep. So again, bodes well, I think, for the Sooners defense. Final one comes here from Garon Talkoiti is how I'm going to pronounce it. Depends on Mateer. He does too much when he doesn't have to. I listen. I get we don't want interceptions. You never want interceptions. But this is a defense that can make up for interceptions from your quarterback. I want my quarterback to take some chances at times. I want my quarterback to push the ball down the field. I want my quarterback to go make some plays because you got to score points to win football games. And if your quarterback holds the ball too long and is indecisive and takes too many sacks or is making bad decisions because he's holding the ball too long, that's not good either. So there's a balance. Absolutely there is. But I need John Mateer to just go sling that thing, as Jay likes to say.
Yeah, sling that thing, man. I need you to be aggressive. And he will be. The weather is going to determine a lot for Mateer, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know if we're going to really chunk it a lot in this game. I do expect a lot more just design runs, just to be safe, just in the weather itself, right? But I don't want Mateer to be afraid to throw the ball. I want him to be aggressive with his passes. I want him to continue that because I mentioned it coming into the season. He's coming over to a new conference, the SEC first year. It's not. Dudes don't just come in the SEC and dominate year one. Year two, different story. It's like they get an understanding, they get the tape, they get an understanding of how teams are going to try to scheme against them, and then they show out. if John Mateer is going to have a year, it'll be next season, similar to Diego Pavia, to Jaden Daniels, to Joe Burrow. You go down the list of these quarterbacks that, Jackson Dart. Year 2, they all look a lot different than they did year 1. Year 1 was a struggle. Year 2, they always got better. So I anticipate John Mateer to look better next season. Right now, the biggest thing for him, though, is the focus on making sure that he pushes the ball against Bama. Because I'm going to be honest, they get against Indiana, he might actually play a little bit better against them in comparison.
Just win, baby. That's really what it comes down to.
Just win.
It doesn't matter how it looks. Just win. They're not going to care if you win 13-10 or 33-10. All that matters is getting that
Dub's a dub.
Dub is a dub.